Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
The weather was dreary, it was raining heavily, seeping into the souls of the city dwellers with invisible darkness, making them even angrier, more irritable, and intolerant towards each other. Amidst those fleeing from the downpour, pouring from the sky like a curse, there was a small barefoot boy, about 12 years old, who was in a kind of an oblivion. He was wandering aimlessly, dragging his feet through puddles, nervously avoiding people. The city roared, splashed, and thundered, the wind howled, and not a single living soul paid attention to the slender figure lost in this chaotic metropolitan flow. Completely soaked, the boy, whose name was Miguel, found his way to the outskirts and noticed some abandoned building. It seemed to be either an unfinished construction site or an uninhabited structure left to decay. The first floor was cluttered and messy. Old rags, trash, bottles, and glass shards dangerously littered the surface that was once a floor covered in brown paint. In one corner, Miguel noticed an old iron bed with a greasy mattress and a dry blanket. He crawled into this refuge, curled up, and instantly fell asleep while the unprecedented rain continued to pour. In his dreams, Miguel saw terrifying scenes from his life, fragments of his father's curse-laden words. He jerked and sobbed in his sleep but couldn't wake up. In reality, Miguel Navarro was not an orphan. He had been living with his father since he was 5 years old. However, he couldn't get used to the fact that his mother had abandoned him. Memories of a carefree childhood with both parents suddenly gave way to beatings and humiliation. Why did his mother treat him so cruelly? It was an unbearable time. Miguel's father, Pablo Navarro, had moved to a new apartment with a young woman and told Miguel to call her mom, while his beloved mother, T, who had protected him from his father's anger, had disappeared. Pain and resentment settled in the child's soul. His stepmother despised him, schemed against him, lied to his father, claiming that Miguel didn't listen, behaved badly, insulted others, and even had fights. Pablo Navarro, who was a retired officer, loved his son. Fate had given him his son in his late years, but he never showed his feelings. Over time, Miguel became convinced that his father hated him. For any mistake, the former serviceman severely punished his son, taking a long, heavy whip and firmly teaching the unruly boy a lesson. Such discipline was considered necessary for nurturing the spirit, but from Miguel's perspective, it was just unbearable trauma. The first blow was excruciating. One day he woke up, and his mother was not there. His father didn't explain anything and silently went to his study. The little boy thought that his mom would surely return soon, but by the evening, she was still nowhere to be seen. When he asked his father, the man took out the whip and punished his son. A man doesn't ask foolish questions. You should remember that. But why can't I? Before the boy could finish, the whip struck his back, and in pain, grief, and humiliation, Miguel stopped asking anything. He just waited for the day when the door would open and his mother would walk in. Then he remembered 5 sleepless nights, a week-long fever, unfamiliar men's voices, and a bright white room with soft beds. Kind nurses in white coats visited the boy. One of them asked about his father, trying to assure him that he wouldn't be given away, but his father had to explain how they treated the boy at home. Miguel remained silent, as if he had suddenly forgotten how to speak. It felt like an endless number of days and nights had passed. The family moved, a new mother figure appeared, and his father continued the harsh upbringing. Stepmother Olympia wanted to get rid of the gloomy boy who harshly punished him for every minor mistake or poor cleaning. On the day of his escape, she stole Miguel's school diary, but, to her dismay, it showed that he was doing well at school, and then cold-bloodedly wrote down some F's for the past week. When his father came home for the weekly assessment, he didn't even give Miguel a chance to speak. Accusing his stepmother, Pablo became even angrier and toughened the punishment. Miguel couldn't bear such betrayal. "Dad, she's lying, and you believe her, not me. You never believe me, never listen to me, you only tell me to shut up. You better silence her. You are not a father to me. Not a father. I hate both of you." The boy wriggled out of his father's grip, skillfully evaded him, and dashed barefoot out into the rain. Then he was running without looking back, exhausting himself, sobbing inconsolably for a long time. In this way, the boy found himself on the streets, yearning to disappear, to die, but never to return again. On that day, his father didn't report to the police, but he called his school teacher. The teacher praised the boy for his diligence and excellent academic performance. She chatted for 10 minutes, describing what a wonderful boy Miguel was. Pain pierced through Pablo, and he had a lump in his throat. He remembered the past 6 years. What had become of him? How did he blindly trust Olympia and not see the efforts of the neglected boy? If his son didn't come back, he would be right. Pablo wiped away a tear, stood up, and took the whip. Olympia screamed when she saw her husband in the doorway. "Pablo, what are you doing? You've been lying to me." "What are you talking about?" "I've never." She didn't have a chance to finish as the whip struck her face, leaving a red mark. The woman screamed in horror, recoiled, and tried to escape, but Pablo blocked her way. "Tell me the truth right now. You know, I tried my best to be your son's friend and helper, but he just hates me. He thinks that I'm the reason his mother left. I just wanted to live in peace and harmony, without arguments and resentment, but Miguel never listened to me. Forgive me, but it was unbearable when he refused to eat my food, didn't share anything about school, and didn't let me check his homework. He built a wall between us that I could never break. I was so tired. Nobody but you cared for the child, and because of you, not me, he ran away. I believed you until the end. I've heard these stories 1,000 times. I just called his school teacher, and they told me that there are no issues with his studies. What do you say to that?" Pablo angrily shouted, wanting to strike, but then changed his mind, exhausted as if the whip were too heavy to lift. "It was a test. I didn't mean to do it like that. I just needed to tell you something important. Yes, we've been fighting for your attention from the very beginning. Miguel, what is he? He's a child, yes, a cunning one. You spent all your time with him. If he wanted, you'd go to the park together without me. When the boy was sick, you spent 24 hours by his side. But what was left for me? To wait and hope that you'd stop being so attached to the little parasite and remember that you have a wife. I forgave you everything. You and your tea, and the child on the side. And what about you? Without asking me, you brought Miguel into our home. I only exist like a servant all these years. Pablo, I hate him. He took everything from me. He turned my life upside down. If not for him, we have our own child. If you want to know the truth, there it is. I've been waiting for Miguel to die or leave the house. Now, I got what I wanted. You didn't get it. Now you are left alone. Get out of here, so I never see you again." That evening, Pablo realized that he had been living next to a monster. Instead of a wife, he had a son. By morning, the weather had calmed down. The rain had relented, and the timid sun was peeking through the clouds, weakly warming the earth submerged in mud and water. The paths quickly dried up, and the puddles disappeared one by one. The clear and sunny day symbolized the rebirth of harmony and peace on earth. Miguel slept until morning, and when he woke up, he saw someone sleeping at his feet, curled up. He approached and looked closely. It seemed to be a boy of the same age as him, but dirty and skinny. At that moment, the stranger woke up, stretched with a contented shining smile, and said cheerfully, "Hey, bro, who are you?" "Miguel," he blurted out in surprise, marveling he was in high spirits. "I'm Leo. Let's get to the point. How did you end up here?" "I'm hungry, by the way. I left home and that's it. I can't go back there, no way." "Oh, well, they'll find you quickly. I've escaped from the orphanage 5 times already, and they caught me in just 2 days, dragged me back like I was nothing. And going back there is not an option. Valerio watches over the place and forces us to do shady stuff, and he beats us for no reason." "What? Shady stuff? What do you mean?" Oh, you're green, but beaten too, I see. Who do you think he is, huh? It's none of your business, Miguel hissed angrily, then reconsidered. I don't want to think about home, so don't be mad. There's no need to speak about it. We need to stick together and figure out what to do next. Well, I have a good plan. I've wanted to leave for a long time, but I never dared. Besides, I know where to go. I've been planning this for 2 years. I just didn't want to run like this without a plan. All right, we'll see if you're really smart. I'll go to the nearby canteen. Maybe I can get some food there. And why are you barefoot? That's not good. They'll spot you, and someone might call the police. You stay here. They won't report me. They all know me and don't bother. I'll be right back. Wait up. Leo hurried away. His cheerful voice, almost bald head, and clear blue eyes were striking. He had met many boys like him in his life, but this one was running around, chattering, not caring about anything. After a while, the boys were munching on a plump bun, split in half by Leo, and drinking water from a bottle. They alleviated their hunger for a bit. They shared their future plans. The boy from the orphanage seemed to be glad to have found an unexpected friend in misfortune. He was Leo's first grateful listener, unspoiled by life, even though anger still dwelled within him. Leo, here's the thing. We need to get to my place. I have the keys. I always carry them with me. I have a zippered pocket in my pants. Listen carefully. Don't take anything from the kitchen. We'll get what we need later. Make it look like nobody was there, so they won't suspect anything. Got it? I got it. But why am I risking it? Wait, I said I've been wanting to escape for a long time, and I made some preparations. You just need to bring me a book from the shelf, The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe. It has an address and my documents in it. We'll go there. Miguel chose not to mention his stash, not fully trusting his new acquaintance. Should I grab some shoes too? Don't dare take anything else. We'll manage on our own. I promise you won't get lost with me. It's my first time running away, but I have big plans in mind. I was top of my class at school, you know. Just listen to me, don't be afraid. You're not the only clever one, I know more than you do. We won't survive without adults. We have to find our place in this world somehow. And what's with your documents? Empty space. Now you're like no one, vanished, and nobody needs you anymore. That's how it is. You seem to not exist in this world anymore. Forget about it. Let's go to my place, and I'll explain everything later. Fine. But when your parents aren't around? Stepmother is working late today. She's on the night shift at the factory. I need to look after my dad when she's gone. He's supposed to go fishing today. So, you check just to be sure. Call. No one will open the door, then come in. Having carefully planned their escape, the boys tidied themselves up. Leo turned out to be a slim, long-legged handsome boy, exuding optimism and joy. He was dressed in a good sports suit, black sneakers, still not too worn out, and a khaki-colored cap on his head, making him look quite impressive, more grown up. In contrast, Miguel looked like a runaway boy from home, domestic shorts, a tank top, and bare feet. The escapee had a gloomy appearance, his rough dark brown hair standing on end. His brown eyes gleamed angrily, and he glared fiercely and sternly from under his brows. Leo looked at his new friend and shook his head. You shouldn't go out looking like this. They'll figure something's wrong right away. I walked through half the city like this yesterday, and no one paid attention to me. That's because people weren't looking at each other yesterday. They were searching for shelter from the pouring rain. People become absent-minded and indifferent in the rain. But it's sunny now. Everyone is walking slowly and scrutinizing each other. Oh, hold on, at least put on my sweatshirt, and I have an extra t-shirt too. Miguel reluctantly got dressed, zipping up his clothes, but he looked a bit strange. The long jacket almost covered his short shorts. Glancing at his friend, Leo chuckled but decided to let Miguel join him. They made their way through the back streets where there were fewer people. Together, the boys returned to Miguel's home, where he gritted his teeth in anger. Leo glanced at his new friend, thinking that his soul was dark, and he seemed quite hostile. Had he made the right choice in teaming up with him? Pablo wasn't home. He had been at the police station since morning, refusing to leave until they started searching for his son immediately. "When did your son disappear?" the officer asked coldly. "He left home yesterday and hasn't returned," replied Pablo. "Did you call his friends?" "Yes, no. I don't know his friends. Come back in 3 days. I can't do a report now. Search for him among his acquaintances. It seems he didn't just leave for no reason. Don't bother us, or I'll have to call Child Protective Services." "Don't you dare tell me what to do," snapped Pablo. "And stop scaring me with nonsense. I've walked minefields at the checkpoint. What about you? Sitting here, feeling warm and still can't do your job. Man, you're not at a checkpoint, different laws apply here. If you start causing trouble, I'll call for backup." "Fine, do as you wish. I'll stay here for 3 days." Meanwhile, Leo effortlessly slipped into the apartment, taking note of the luxury there, which his new friend preferred to abandon. Then he went to the kitchen, swiped a sausage and a loaf of bread. Finally, he found the required book, grabbed the shoes from the hallway, closed the door, and returned to Miguel. Miguel gave Leo an angry look as he noticed the food and the new shoes, but he waved his hand without saying a word. He put on the shoes, and together they made their way to their hiding spot. Along the way, Miguel seemed to lag behind, but later took out a bill from a stash hidden in the book. With this money, they bought juice and then retreated to an abandoned building. After a satisfying meal, Leo was unusually cheerful. He secretly admired Miguel, who had told him about his school earnings. "So, my friend, we can go anywhere," Miguel concluded, not bragging about the sum he had. "But it's not that simple. We can take a night bus. They are searching for us now. I once rode to the next city among the luggage in the trunk. Well, they're busy loading from one side, so you can sneak in from the other side and hide in the huge compartment at the bottom. They won't notice if you're quiet. But where are we going to go? We'll go to my grandmother's. My father and I were there a couple of times. Since then, he hasn't talked to her. Marlene doesn't listen to anyone. She's gone wild, pouring her sorrows into alcohol. My dad doesn't visit or care for her anymore. She's been alone for 2 years. I was there once, when our class went on a hiking trip. I asked for permission and walked all the way to my grandmother's. She didn't recognize me and kicked me out. She's begging now, just to get some handouts, and then drinks it all away. The neighbor told me about it. So why do we need to go to your grandmother then? You are such a fool. She's my relative, supposedly my legal guardian. We'll register you as my brother. Don't worry, I'll buy you the necessary documents. Grandma doesn't remember anything, she'll confirm everything. She'll do anything for money. Just give her some cash, and she'll help us with whatever we want. But your father will find you quickly. We'll hide, we'll pay the neighbor too. What does she care about me? I'll tell her that things are tough for me, and so on. We'll study here. Got it? We need an education, otherwise, we won't have a chance in life. It'll all work out fine. But won't the teachers report to my dad? Let them report. I told you we'll hide. For a week, a month. My dad will understand that I'm studying. I don't want to see him. But we need to get our school documents. Don't worry, I'll figure everything out. Let my grandmother request a transfer to another school. It's possible, I checked. And what about me? I need to think about that. You know, you won't need to study, you'll work for me, doing various tasks. You'll be my business partner. I'm listening to you, and I can't help but think that it's better to endure Valerio at the orphanage and try to get an education myself. That's right. And you, with all your cunning and anger, you only care about yourself, and I'm just a servant, like a courier. How is this better than being in the orphanage? They feed us there, and then they'll give us a place to live. And what guarantees do you offer? What if I run away? Deep down, I know it's wrong. You're a coward. In the times of difficulties, you want to go to the place where it's always calm and stable. You are a dreamer. Go back to your father, it's safer. Stand your ground, prove that your stepmother is wrong. You can do it. Invite someone from school to testify, don't act like you're someone you're not. I've never had parents, I've been alone for 13 years, I've never heard any kind words, I had no gifts, no place of my own. I've never known any other life, class, canteen, and a rag in the hallway, year after year. That's hopelessness. Look at me, I'm not angry like you. I'm here for you. The world isn't my enemy. No one is to blame for my loneliness. Who gave birth to me, God will judge them, I've forgiven everyone. And what about you? All dark and angry. Leo spoke calmly, without sorrow, even quietly and humbly. Then he raised his voice with conviction and ran away swiftly, leaving Miguel to snort and shake his head. He had no time for this pitiful, timid, and somehow offensive, smiling boy. Miguel had firmly decided to go to his grandmother's village, buy her favor, and hire a caregiver if needed. He had a stash of almost $1 million, brand new bills saved in parts over the years on a children's account. His father was unaware of the scheme since the card was provided by a local classmate. Keeping money on the card was risky, after all, it was someone else's account, but Miguel loved cash, and only it gave him a sense of security and satisfaction. Leaving the city was decided upon right away. The runaway bought a backpack, packed food, a smartphone, it was with a pawnshop SIM card, spent a long time choosing a sweater with an internal pocket to keep the money close to his body, and decided he would need 2 sweaters. In the first pocket, he put the money, zipped it up, and then put on a hoodie over it. He chose white pants, making him look more powerful and imposing. At night, he sneaked onto a bus, hiding among the luggage. After 3 hours of shaking, the boy finally emerged when someone retrieved their luggage at the next stop. The driver shouted something after him, but he sped away. He could have walked the rest of the way, but the night scared him, so Miguel found shelter in an unfinished store where none of the workers had yet arrived. At dawn, the boy continued his journey and reached the village an hour later. He didn't get lost, thanks to the navigator he had activated on his phone, and he had already studied the map of the area. He knew the area well, having absorbed the geography lessons perfectly. The grandmother's house looked forlorn, with an overgrown garden even in the middle of June. The gate was ajar, barely holding up. The boy glanced around, saw a brick path leading to the house, and lifted one brick to create a hiding spot. He wrapped the money in a plastic bag, buried it in the hole, covered it with soil, and then closed the brick, leaving only a few bills in his pocket. The door to the cottage was not locked. As he opened it, a horrible, old smell of sourness, urine, and moonshine hit him. Leaving the door open, the boy opened the windows and removed the black, dirty curtains. Then something heavy fell on his head. Good thing I hid the money, he managed to think before falling to the floor. A formidable figure of a grandmother stood above him. She was wearing some intimidatingly colorful dress. "Who are you, and why did you break into my house?" she demanded. "Well, Granny, you're still not bad," the boy replied. "I'll beat you right now." "No need, Granny, I'm your grandson, Miguel." "Miguel, you're not welcome here. Get out immediately." The combatant Granny raised the poker again, and the boy crawled under the table, but then carefully looked out and started saying softly, "Oh, you're quite the poet, but listen to me first. I didn't come empty-handed. I brought you a gift." "Well, come here then, show yourself." "It's good that something finally came into these hands," she said. Miguel sighed and emerged, understanding that she must have had some alcohol in the morning. "Marlene, here's what I brought." The crafty boy pulled out various sweets, a box of chocolates, cheese, sausages, and sprats. Well, that's good. That makes a difference. Sit down, and I'll make some coffee. Marlene looked around and realized that there was no boiling water. The kettle had broken a long time ago, and dirty dishes had been left since yesterday. The pot was occupied. Miguel decided to take care of it and please the old woman. He sat her down on a rickety chair and rolled up his sleeves, putting water in a basin to wash the dishes. He kept busy for an hour and then heard a terrible crash behind him. Marlene had fallen asleep right there, still holding the sausage in her hands. She was snoring peacefully and showed no sign of waking up. The boy walked around her, thinking that reprimanding her would be impossible. So, he placed a pillow under her head and covered her with a blanket. From that day on, he took care of his grandmother, and she took care of him. The strict upbringing from his father had taught him how to manage a household and not to fear hard work. After cleaning the dishes, the boy swept the house, wiped the floors as best as he could, threw the curtains outside, and decided that he couldn't deal with the dirt alone. He also changed the beddings, which surprisingly turned out to be crisp and clean. He made himself comfortable on the decent-looking couch in the living room. The joy of being independent and not facing unfair punishment filled his soul. In the kitchen, he had to work the longest. He took out 2 bags of trash to the yard, unsure of how to dispose of it later. He cleaned the fridge, threw out spoiled pickles and leftover food, and decided to go to the store. He had to ask the neighbor for help, and she told him where to take out the garbage, complaining about his grandmother's visit. Then she escorted him to the store and helped carry the groceries, grumbling about wastefulness. Miguel quickly established his rules, giving the woman some money and sternly stating that there would be no refusal, and he would decide whether payment was necessary for any service. Returning to the cottage, he unpacked the groceries and wondered what to do next. He finally found some old potatoes in a bag, boiled them, and sliced bacon, fish, and sausages. Marlene, who was sleeping until the evening, woke up because of the smell, as she was hungry. She woke up startled, jumped from the floor, grabbed a stool, and, making strange noises, ran to the kitchen, holding a piece of bacon in her hands, ready to attack. Miguel once again took cover under the table. "Granny, are you completely nuts? Look, I've got food ready, cleaned up, and here you are, ready to fight. Oh, you are a wild woman." "Miguel, oh, my dear, I forgot. How did you manage to do everything so quickly?" "With my own hands and feet. Sit down, I made strong coffee, here, drink it, forget about alcohol." The grandmother sat down feeling ashamed. She looked at her grandson with sadness, lowered her gaze, and a scarce tear rolled down her wrinkled cheek. "I'm all alone. So lonely. My son abandoned me, hasn't even visited in 2 years. It's so lonely, and my pension is not enough. I live in poverty. I'm sorry I greeted you this way." Remembering his warm reception, Miguel chuckled and then gathered courage and said, "Marlene, I'll stay here with you. My father allowed it, he's gone somewhere with his woman. I was embarrassed to ask him about staying with you, so I came here on my own. Here's a letter from him." The cunning boy pulled out a prepared letter, which was kept in the same box disguised as a book that Leo took after escaping. Skillfully forging his father's handwriting, Miguel wrote a kind and touching letter, apologizing for his father's behavior and asking her to take care of him for a while. There was a sum of money with the letter. It stated to it'll be sent every month. Marlene slowly read the letter. Her mind seemed to wander, and she turned pale. She dropped the letter and stared blankly out the window. She was sitting like that for about 10 minutes, then seemed to snap out of it, silently picked up the letter and the money. They were eating in silence, and the boy cleared the table, glancing curiously at his grandmother. She got up from the table, walked heavily into another room, and closed the door. The house, though neglected, was spacious. From the spacious hallway, 3 doors led to the bedrooms, living room, and a cluttered guest room. There was no door to the kitchen. There was a stove, a wheat cupboard, a table, and stools. There was also a spacious veranda filled with junk. Outside, there was a plot of land, a bathhouse, and a toilet. For a city dweller, it might seem inconvenient, but the village was not far from the city, and there was sewage. Many residents had modern amenities, organizing their homes with water supply, heating, and even bathrooms. Marlene didn't have all that, and even resourceful Miguel couldn't make a significant leap in improving the house and the property. The idea of raising pigs seemed pointless now. If he learned to provide people with comfort like in the city, he could rise. But for now, things were bleak. He persuaded his grandmother for a long time, appealing to her conscience, until she finally agreed to freshen up. He bought her a voucher for a health resort, but passing the medical examination turned out to be extremely challenging. For 2 weeks, they went from one doctor to another, waited, restored the necessary documents, and bought new clothes. Marlene moaned, cursed, threatening to abandon the whole ordeal, but the determined Miguel stood his ground, and eventually, his grandmother left to the health resort. Now he could put the house in order according to his liking. With a boss's disposition from birth, the boy walked around the village and found 2 workers with a tractor willing to help with cleaning and repairs for a small fee. The house ended up with only necessary furniture and belongings. Without any doubt, they got rid of everything else, taking it to the dump. They whitewashed the walls and ceiling, painted the floors with cheap paint. The workers turned out to be unreliable. They tried to intimidate the boy into giving them the money, searched through his belongings in the evening. However, Miguel was clever, and he outsmarted them by saying that he left a stash outside, then left the house and ran straight to the police station. On that day, the men had a tough time, spending the night in custody. Later, they held a grudge but decided not to mess with the boy. Miguel earned the nickname Little Boss, and he felt powerful and important. He posted advertisements offering help with house chores. He didn't want to burden his grandmother with work, and he wouldn't have time to handle everything himself. Winter was almost there, he had to go to school, and a guardian would be helpful. He quickly found the bodyguard. He was a cheerful 19-year-old guy, living in a large family, ready to take on any job. Later, Timoteo became indispensable for Miguel, but that's a story for later. Challenges were still ahead. Granny returned from her vacation after a week, and she was difficult to recognize, as if she had rested from 5 years of oblivion. She smiled and radiated from within, as if her precious grandson had rescued her from the clutches of hopelessness. But Miguel was only using people to achieve his goals. He treated his grandmother with indifference. She was only useful to him as a guardian. He coldly listened to her complaints about how everything valuable had been taken away and then yelled at her, saying that she had let herself go, covered in moss and dirt. The process of Miguel's registration in the village was not without drama. Going to school brought surprises. After inquiries from the city about the expulsion of a high school student named Miguel, an angry Pablo came to Marlene's house. Miguel sensed his father and quickly jumped out of the window just before meeting him. He hid in the bathhouse of his assistant Timoteo, knowing that his father would search for him relentlessly. Marlene and her son had an intense talk later. "Well, Mom, where is Miguel? I almost buried him a month ago, and here you are hiding him. How dare you not tell me?" Pablo was standing in the corridor, having already searched the whole house and yard, overturning stools along the way. "You've gone completely crazy, Pablo. Here, read this." Marlene went to her room and brought back a letter. Miguel's father stared in amazement at the letters, identical to his handwriting, and quickly read the message. "Yeah, this little rascal really got crafty. It wasn't me who wrote this. My son twisted things around. What's this all about? Did your child double-cross you? You treated him like he was a mess, so he ran away. Shut up, old woman. Do you remember how you lived and how you turned your back on me?" As soon as Pablo left the house, his mother said with a surprised look, "But you see, it's fine now. Look, Miguel did all of this. He made everything clean and neat. He even found me a helper, and everything is running smoothly around the house. That worker of his, he is something. And you? What have you done? Tell me, what have you done for your mother? Remember, you can't fix a person with yelling, hitting, and hurtful words. You can only fix a person with good deeds. You should understand that. Your son is not a fool, even though he's young, he's wiser than you. You raised a difficult boy, and he's got character. He's teaching me things now. He won't forgive you, never will he forgive you because you didn't value him, and you hurt him deeply. I've seen it all. He has scars on his back, it's heartbreaking to look at them. You're not a father, and you're not a son. Pablo was listening to this tirade, and in his heart, he knew his mother was right, she was always right, but his pride wouldn't allow him to admit it. He stood in the corridor, turning pale, clenching his fists in anger, and only the thought that he could only do evil deeds stopped him from punishing his mother for her cruel words. He kicked the door with his foot, stormed out, searched the yard again, went to the neighbor, asked for Timoteo's whereabouts, and went to his house to interrogate him. The imposing, tall, and burly man towered over Pablo menacingly. Why are you coming here? This is a private house, I won't let my family down. Don't play games, where's Miguel? I just want to talk to him properly. I want to apologize. Things will be different now. Son, come out to your father, let's make peace. I know I was wrong. I admit it. Well, you visited Grandma and now it's time to come home. The man tried to force his way into the yard, pushing the owner. Timoteo sternly brandished an axe he had taken out of the shed and advanced towards Pablo. In that moment, a voice from above told, "No need. Leave him." Miguel stood on the sloping roof of the high bathhouse. "As you wish," the guy with the axe said quietly and stepped aside. Miguel, my son, I never thought I'd see you. Forgive me, my dear boy. Everything will be different now, let's make amends. I was wrong, I admit it. Come down to your father. I have no father. You should leave, man, you mean nothing to me. Otherwise, I'll jump from here. I'd rather die than live with you. And take the documents from the school and leave Grandma's place. I have everything I need, go away. Well, how can you say that? Everyone deserves a chance, you can't do this to me. You had many chances, it's over now. Miguel lifted his leg, as if he was about to jump down immediately. Pablo recoiled in horror and rushed away. His heart was torn with pain and sorrow. He lost his son, and he doubted he could ever beg for forgiveness. This time, he decided to leave everything as it was and let Miguel fend for himself. Without a father, in this village, without comfort or a computer. Where could the boy go? Pablo decided to visit his son later and left for some time. By September, nothing had changed. Miguel achieved what he wanted, he was registered at the school. A new chapter in the boy's life began. He appeared different from the other village boys, and they kept their distance, not wanting to be friends with the little boss. Miguel, in turn, arrogantly sneered at them, learning about his new business on his brand new laptop, which he bought for himself, and cherishing the dream of having his own company. He excelled in his studies, tried to offer help with studies to the local kids, but they just brushed him off. The villagers were indifferent to studying, they endured reproaches for not doing their homework, skipped school days, and roamed around the village. The strange city boy irritated them. In the beginning, they rejected him in their company until something peculiar happened. Waiting for a lesson on the outskirts, a gang of local boys decided to play a prank on him. The little boss came up with a cunning plan, summoned the gang's leader, and offered him a position as a bodyguard for a small monthly fee. Now, Miguel was not only protected, but he also had control over these useless boys. Money ruled everything. Over the next 4 years, that truth was proved for Miguel not once. Even at his young age, he managed to start a business. The idea came naturally, solving problems related to home comfort. Studying the intricacies, poring over books and encyclopedias, Miguel decided to start small, with water supply and boiler installations. Timoteo went to the city and brought back a graduate student from the Communal and Construction Technical School who was a promising and talented engineer named Samuel. He settled in Marlene's house, and though she grumbled, she didn't dare argue with her grandson. With his small team, Miguel took their first job while still attending high school, and it went well. They divided the profits among three of them. Elated by their success, the boy continued studying entrepreneurship while his team took on any job related to property improvement as well as household chores. Only his young age prevented Miguel from expanding and formalizing everything properly and opening an office. In high school, when Miguel turned 16, he passed his exams successfully and got accepted into a college of economics and law. During this time, his team nearly fell apart twice. The first disaster came from the city. A local businessman met with the young man and threatened trouble for his worker Timoteo. He was afraid for his family. The assistant backed out of his duties and tried to find a job on his own. Samuel, on Miguel's advice, held back, helping local wealthy families with small plumbing jobs. But that was not the level of work that could bring in substantial income. Confronted by competition, Miguel found a different way to bypass it. He planned to move to the city where he was studying. Marlene wept and lamented that she wouldn't be able to manage alone, but her grandson didn't listen, packed his belongings in silence, bid her a cold farewell, and left. Left alone, Marlene pondered deeply. She could never understand this person. He had taken care of her for 4 years, and now he left without leaving her a single penny, not even saying thank you. It seemed his heart was locked away, as though he refused to show any emotions. He never even looked at the village girls, considering them unworthy of his attention. Miguel not only didn't squander his savings, but also multiplied them. He rented a spacious apartment and set up an office in one of the rooms. But he couldn't immediately continue with his plans. Fate tripped him up again. Though Timoteo returned to the boss, unable to find a better job, Samuel adamantly refused. He fell in love with a girl and decided to marry her. Love affairs took away the main employee from the firm for a while. After the wedding, however, the engineer returned. He needed to provide for his family. Following a family council, his wife allowed him to save money for an apartment in the city. Miguel's studies didn't take much time. The company expanded, and they had enough orders. About 10 new employees with different specialties joined the team, and accounting was set up. By the end of his studies, Miguel, finally coming of age, officially registered the company under his name. Thus, the most renowned company Comfort emerged in the city, offering a wide range of services: water supply, construction of small structures, landscape design, and more. The company's office was built in the city center, a 2-story building with a tower. The owner of this organization was known as a ruthless and demanding boss who tolerated no objections. Miguel personally arranged everything as he pleased. The salaries of the supporting staff were hopelessly low, and a series of dismissals didn't bother the entrepreneur, as he would hire anyone desperate for work. Timoteo regretted his return to the company. The owner seemed to forget all the good he had done for him. Miguel appointed an experienced military man as the head of the security department, while he assigned his loyal assistant as an ordinary guard. Timoteo couldn't forgive him for that. He attempted to meet with Miguel, but the latter curtly responded that if the position didn't suit him, he could leave. With a heavy heart, the cheerful, robust, and devoted Timoteo left for his family. He soon found a job as a forester and cut the former friend out of his life. However, the situation was different with Samuel, who had not only education but also was talented. Moreover, he was older than the boss and knew how to manipulate people. With time, becoming the deputy head, Samuel became indispensable in many matters. He organized equipment supplies, conducted testing, and even visited work sites himself. Miguel realized that his enterprising employee was not so simple, yet he couldn't do without him. Thanks to Samuel, his wife's dream came true. He bought an apartment, drove a luxurious car, and catered to his family's every desire. Meanwhile, Miguel remained alone. He never visited his father, meeting him only at his grandmother's place, but refusing to speak to him. After moving to the city, the young man forgot about Marlene. He didn't call or visit her. His heart had grown callous, and in his mind, there were only numbers and money. The owner of comfort fulfilled his main dream, but it didn't make him happy. He invited girls, had fun, tried all kinds of active sports, went hunting and fishing, but nothing touched his soul or brought joy, as if the scars on his back were just as painful as the scars in his soul. Only work provided a means of distraction and satisfaction. In the evenings, he returned to his luxurious apartment, pacing from one corner to another, dealing with his company's affairs in his mind. This somnambulistic state was interrupted only once when news from the past reached him. One day, Miguel personally went to a project site where the client insisted that both the designer and the owner himself attend. They arrived at a small house with a spacious yard. Two huskies were peacefully sleeping on the lawn. They only wagged their tails at the uninvited guests and got up only when they saw their owner. The guests were greeted by a slim, blue-eyed guy with a radiant smile. "Hey, buddy," he smiled, unexpectedly hugging Miguel. "Leo?" The head of the company exclaimed, to the great surprise of the designer, smiling for the first time in his life. "I recognized you. Look at you, all important. But I knew you could do it. It's such a wonderful coincidence. I sold my apartment in the hometown and bought a house here. I was browsing the ads, and you were there, the owner of comfort. You looked familiar, and then I read the name Miguel. Come on, let your employee think about what can be done on the plot for now. Okay? We'll go to the house. Let's have some coffee." Memories pierced the young man. He remembered running barefoot in the rain, and then this cheerful guy feeding him a roll without knowing him, simply sharing from the kindness of his heart. And it was as if his heart began to thaw, covered in layers of ice. Valerio was endlessly chatty. He was open to the world and naturally happy. A fluffy white cat greeted them in the house, and then a little energetic 3-year-old girl grabbed the animal and joyfully squealed and laughed, running away with it. In the kitchen, there was a stately, fair-haired girl with clear, kind eyes. "Miguel, this is my wife, Laura. Laura, meet Miguel. Well, I told you about him. And this little rascal is Katerina, our daughter." "Hello," the guest said quietly, feeling uncomfortable in this realm of love and joy. "Oh, you're always so gloomy. Look at me. I'm working as a guard, Laura is a teacher. We're not very wealthy, just this house is what we have. We can't even afford a proper design. I just wanted to see you," Leo replied. "And how did you live afterwards?" "Well, we farewelled in a bad way. That's how it is. I wanted to say that one shouldn't dream about the wrong things, but I didn't. And you know, I stopped running away. I looked at it from the outside. The main gift is the ability to withstand a blow, endure hardships without malice. That's my character. That's my treasure. Many people become bitter in life, but letting go, forgiving everyone, that's a special skill. I lived in an orphanage until I turned 18, did odd jobs wherever I could. Then I got an apartment and met Laura. My happiness. Simple, family happiness. Our daughter is growing up. We'll buy a trailer and travel the world. That's my dream. And money? The soul shouldn't crave that. They won't heal the pain in the heart." "Leo, you were a philosopher then, and you're still one," Miguel smirked. "What about you?" "Well, I finished school at my grandmother's in the village, then I went to the college and gradually built up the company." "Do you visit your family?" "No, I don't want to." "Well, what do you want now?" Looking at his carefree, happy old friend, Miguel suddenly realized that he couldn't answer that question. His mother had left, and he had longed to understand. He was waiting for her return, but then came the whip, and his heart closed forever. He didn't know what he wanted. All these years, he lived like a robot, mechanically pursuing his goal, but that goal was material prosperity. What was the purpose of all this money? They lay cold and lifeless in the safe, but inside, there was emptiness. Only that half-shared role from his childhood somehow had meaning. Back then, he should have understood something, but he didn't. He didn't hear the faint beating of his heart. Back then, he could still cry. "Hey, are you okay?" Leo interrupted his thoughts. "Come on, sit at the table, let's have some coffee." On the table, in a basket, there were piles of fluffy, sweet rolls, along with small jars of aromatic jam and fragrant coffee. Miguel inhaled the unfamiliar scent of care, family well-being, and remembered his grandmother. He had acted unfairly, leaving her alone again, just like his father. Yes, he repeated the same mistakes. "Well, what's your plan? Maybe we should go on a hike together?" Leo asked. "I'll think about it. Thanks. Your coffee is wonderful, but I have to go. I'll call you." But he never called, leaving Leo in his thoughts. However, the friend understood that it wasn't the right time yet. A whole life was ahead, and something extraordinary had to happen for Miguel to wake up from his slumber. For now, his icy heart covered itself with a new layer, shaped by annoyance and envy. Leo? Who was he? Just a simpleton. What was the point of learning from him? Yes, what did he understand if he was poor, with a daughter and a wife? On that day, Miguel fired a woman whose child was always sick and then received several quite profitable orders. From the office, he went straight to the sauna, taking Samuel along. They had fun until late at night and returned home at dawn. The conscience, briefly awakened, hit again, and Miguel formed a cunning plan in his mind. What was the family idol for? He wanted to prove that money solves everything. Leo's wife caught his eye with her charming face and simple manners. Before, he had to deal with spoiled dolls, cold and incapable of care or heartfelt conversations. But Laura intrigued him with her feminine charisma, so he decided to visit his friend's home. First, as a broad gesture, he offered to do the garden design for free. His gesture would certainly be appreciated. The next morning, Miguel visited Leo's house and found Laura there alone. "Hello, Leo's not here. He'll be at work until evening," she simply said. "Hello, I brought a plan. The designer sketched it out. It's a gift for an old friend. If you like it, we can finish it in 2 days. The area is not large. You shouldn't have done it. But let Leo decide. Come on, sit down since you're here. How about some sorrel soup?" "With pleasure. If it's not too much trouble, I'm just a freeloader. Wait, I brought some candies and wine. I don't drink alcohol. But I won't refuse something sweet." They sat next to each other, and Miguel felt an inner excitement. He wanted to hold this touching woman's hand, feel her warmth, but it was too early to act. He stood up, thanked her for the extraordinary soup, and said goodbye. At the exit, he accidentally blurted out, "I'm heading to the city park now. There's an equipment maintenance order there. Maybe we can take a walk?" "Well, it's inconvenient. Although I've been there alone before, my daughter is at the daycare nearby." "Well, everyone needs a break from their cares." "All right, but then straight back home." Miguel seated Laura in his luxurious convertible, and they strolled in the park for a long time, trying out all the carousels. Later, Miguel treated Laura to an exquisite restaurant meal. They arrived home in the afternoon, and Laura asked him to drop her off at the daycare center next to their house. As he opened the car door, Miguel's hand accidentally brushed against hers, and he felt a tremor in response. It was the first genuine emotion he had felt in many years. Laura rushed off, and Miguel returned to his cold, dreary home. The game didn't go as planned, and an unknown feeling began to awaken in his heart. For 2 days, the boss himself handled the minor project, the garden design. He visited Leo and gave orders, transported materials himself, and befriended the Huskies, Max and Molly, but he couldn't win over the cat. The darn thing kept biting and scratching him and then, having had enough, ran away. Meanwhile, Leo only showed up in the evenings and scowled, noticing the furtive glances Miguel cast towards his wife. But it was too late. Laura suddenly felt an irresistible desire to explore the secrets of the somber yet well-groomed, courageous, and handsome man, her powerful boss. As they said their farewells, the owner said to his former friend, "You should have always stayed away from me. Don't come again, you've confused Laura's mind, she's become a different person, as if you smeared her with your darkness. Don't ruin our lives, mine, hers, and think about my daughter. You grew up without a mother, but what will it be like for her if she goes through the same thing?" "Don't worry, buddy, look at the garden I've created," Miguel responded. "I don't need your garden, I need my family, and I'll pay you for your work, don't worry." "Well, goodbye." Goodbye. For 2 days, Miguel contemplated his decision. He decided to act in his own way, and he was irresistibly drawn to Laura. He wanted to hold her slender waist, kiss her tender lips, cheeks, neck, and shoulders. Why should he have cared about Leo? He was happy. He wanted him to understand that he was wrong. Laura called in 3 days, and they met in the park during the day. It was impossible to take his eyes off her. Her black mini dress, deep neckline emphasized her figure's virtues. Her snow-white hair cascaded in soft curls down to her waist. The delicate makeup made her gaze captivating and alluring, and her lips under the burgundy lipstick trembled. Miguel felt as if his heart had suddenly come to life, as if he hadn't truly lived before. He gifted her an enormous bouquet of roses, kissed her hand, but then couldn't resist and passionately embraced Laura, attempting to kiss her. Suddenly, the girl broke free and burst into laughter. "Oh, Mr. Gloomy Heart has melted. Miguel, did you know that not everything can be bought with money? I am one of those things, and didn't you notice that I never wear such dresses, and this lipstick color doesn't suit me? Did you really understand anything about what I live and breathe for? What I like? No. You only want to possess me like an object. You're just a capricious little boy, wanting to have someone else's toy. But I'm not like that at all, my soul and intentions are pure." "Stop, where are you going, psycho gloomy genius?" "Goodbye." "Well, leave if you want to. And what do you know about us? How he cared for me in the orphanage for 15 years, protected me, saved me, that he is my life and soul, my better half, and you, oh, wait. You were supposed to find your other half and understand that you can express your feelings, that your heart is alive." Miguel did hear Laura's tirade, but it only angered him even more. He still didn't understand anything. Since then, he became harsher towards women, fired several more employees, and spent evenings with different girls. His heart fell silent once again. Meanwhile, the company continued to grow, and a branch was opened in his hometown. Miguel often visited the second office, but still couldn't bring himself to visit his father. In the ruthless world of business, he grew colder again, focused on income and begrudged salaries. The owner of the comfort was well known for his meticulous character. 10 years passed. The whirlpool of business drained the soul out of determined Miguel. He became a powerful and confident man with a penetrating gaze, but still, he didn't have a life partner. An unexpected event in the company turned out to be the shock that rewound the merciless circle of time and put everything in its place. A new cleaner appeared in the second branch, a kind elderly woman who worked diligently. She stayed late, impeccably tidied up, and cleaned Miguel's office with special zeal. For a month, she worked with effort, almost living in the office, seemingly keeping an eye on the boss. Miguel decided to play a joke on the poor woman who somehow irritated him with her presence. On the day of a meeting when all the employees gathered in his office, Miguel walked in and decided to tease the woman sarcastically. "You are so diligent, I should give you money for that." Everyone laughed in unison, knowing that the owner never gave anyone an extra penny and treated the service staff with contempt. "Granny, kiss my feet, and I'll raise your salary." The cleaner, T, sadly stopped, and a tear rolled down her cheek. What she said stunned all the employees. I didn't want my dear son to grow up like this." An intense silence hung in the air. Miguel was shocked and remained silent for a moment, then barked. "Get out! Get out, you crazy old woman! You're fired." Everyone left except the cleaner. She took out a key, locked the office from the inside, and threw the key out of the window. Miguel lunged to follow her, but then reconsidered, walked around the office without looking at the woman who claimed to be his mother, but she authoritatively ordered him to sit down, and inexplicably, he obeyed. Looking at this stranger, Miguel recalled the day she disappeared, and the pain resurfaced in his soul. Now, after so many years, she dared to return and call herself his mother. He sat, clutching the table, a lump forming in his throat. "Listen to me, please. I'm not willing to. You mean nothing to me. You can leave. But until you listen to me, we won't leave here. And you should know that I've been searching for you. I've been looking for you for 25 years. You need to know everything, and you have to let go of this pain. I know it's not just because of your father, it's also because of me. Yes, I showed weakness and left at Pablo's request. It's hard to believe. It's easy to find someone in the city." Miguel turned away, and his mother began to tell her story. "I met your father while serving in the military. He was working on contract at the border at that time. I lived in a neighboring village to support my mother and brother. I worked as a kitchen assistant for many years, then found a good job and started commuting to the border. I never got married. I was cautious and didn't want to leave my family. I was in my 40s when your father started courting me. As it turned out, it was out of desperation and boredom. He had a loyal woman waiting for him at home, Olympia, the woman who caused me to lose everything. After a month, I found out that Pablo had resigned. He left without saying goodbye to me, and I attempted suicide by throwing myself under a car, but miraculously survived. I later discovered that I was pregnant, and your father came to say his farewell. Upon learning about the child, he told me to give the baby to him, saying he could provide a better life, while a homeless cook like me was of no use to him. I was heartbroken, realizing that I had given my heart to such a cruel man. But he returned, apologized, and even asked me to marry him. I should have known that such kindness couldn't be expected from him. He never loved me, and we didn't live as husband and wife, only as neighbors. From the beginning, he was planning to take our son away from me. You were very weak and often sick, and your father feared that the separation would harm you. I was happy and believed that my husband loved me, but then he brought me divorce papers. He did everything without involving me, using his old connections. I was crushed. I packed you up and wanted to leave secretly, knowing that your father wouldn't just give you back to me. However, Pablo got ahead of me. While you were asleep, they came from the hospital and took me away. Your father paid a crazy amount to have me confined to a clinic. They took away my parental rights. When I was discharged, you were already gone. Later, I found out that you had moved to another city, and I was left running around between foster care, nursery, school, and passport office. Your father had taken care of everything, silencing everyone, and no one could help me. After leaving the hospital, I was left on the streets, working as a janitor, barely making ends meet. I didn't need anything for myself. I spent my entire life searching for you. By chance, an acquaintance gave me your grandmother's address. When I came to the village, she said you never visited her, and that Pablo had disappeared, not leaving any address and completely forgetting about her existence. I went there 3 times, but it was in vain. I couldn't stay in the city, so I had to go back to my native village to my brother. But he was married and not happy to see me. I had to live in the sauna so as not to disturb his family. Then I became a cook again, living in a corner near the barracks. I led a wandering life, like a homeless person, for more than 20 years. Life passed me by, leaving nothing behind, no home, no children, no joy. But my heart is at peace, and I don't blame anyone. I've forgiven my family a long time ago, and I visit my brother with kindness. Just a month ago, I came back from the border, and Marlene wasn't alive anymore, and the courtyard was overgrown with nettles. That's the story. I asked neighbors about you, and they said you lived with your grandmother for 4 years and then left somewhere without sending a single letter for 100 years. So, I went to ask Timoteo. He told me about you, your former friend who told me everything about those years. He had already forgiven you. He gave me your address and sent his regards. That's how I found out that you made it this far. I wanted to wait a bit, to observe my son from the distance. And the bitterest thing is that life has shuffled you so much, leaving almost nothing in your soul. But you must learn to forgive life and the whole world. Money, as I can see, didn't make you happy at all. My son. Right now, I can't believe that you are my own flesh and blood. I won't wait for your forgiveness, you are too harsh and stubborn. But listen to your heart at least once, it's still alive. Here, I brought you a present. The woman stood up and handed Miguel a small toy car that fit in the palm of her hand. Vague memories of his mother bringing him this toy in the hospital sparked somewhere but disappeared. The mother and son, separated by fate for many years, were sitting there like strangers. Teesside took out a spare set of keys, silently approached her son, hugged him, and whispered softly, "No matter what you are, remember, you are my only son, and I've kept you in my heart all these years." The mother left, quietly closing the door. Employees watched her with smiles and curiosity, noticing a distant resemblance to the boss. Miguel was overwhelmed. For the first time, he couldn't figure out what was happening in his soul. Fragments of phrases, his father's whip, the toy car, Leo's friendly smile, the bond for two, Timoteo's loyalty, and his grandmother, all these memories flooded him. How could he forget about her all these years? His heart had been asleep all this time, and now it hurt. Oh, it hurt so much. I'm alone, I've always ruined everything. I didn't protect anyone, neither friends nor family. What's the point of running over everyone when it brings no happiness? It's all an illusion of life around me. Miguel fell silent, spending the rest of the day in his office. He didn't want to see anyone, so he instructed his secretary to let everyone go home for the day. The company was in turmoil, gossip and rumors about the boss's strange behavior spread like wildfire. The sudden order left everyone shocked. It had never happened before. Urgent orders required immediate execution, so eventually, the bewildered employees dispersed. The owner of Comfort walked through his properties, then silently left, leaving the security guards puzzled. Miguel got into his car and drove to his father's home. The apartment was open. With a heavy heart, he walked into the hallway. Familiar walls and distant memories surrounded him. A young unknown woman in a white robe came out of the room. "Hello, who are you visiting?" I came to see my dad." "Pablo?" The woman raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I'm sorry, I'm the caregiver. Your father has difficulty speaking and moving, he had a stroke. But why didn't you come earlier?" Miguel swallowed hard and quickly walked into the room. At the sight of his aged father, his heart clenched. "Dad, I'm back." He approached and squeezed his father's weakly responsive hand. "My son." "Dad, forgive me. You know I forgave you a long time ago, but my heart seemed asleep all these years. Everything is in the past now, I forgot, I should have visited. Grandma, she didn't wait. Yes, I know, I don't deserve her forgiveness." Pablo smiled and pointed upward, indicating that Grandma sees everything from above, then fell into oblivion, as if he had fallen asleep instantly. The caregiver, watching this, wiped tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong with Dad? He gets tired quickly if he's too agitated or tries to talk too much. Let him rest. Would you like some coffee? How should I address you?" "Miguel." "And I'm Luz." "Come, you're at home here, and I'm a guest," she smiled and suddenly blushed. As if a veil fell from his eyes, the young man now saw, felt, and experienced life. In front of him there was a simple, smiling, rosy-cheeked girl with a light brown braid. He hadn't encountered such natural beauty in a long time. The uncomplicated tea party brought tranquility, and Miguel's revived soul joyfully appreciated the simple pleasures, perceiving scents and tastes differently. Overnight, they bid farewell to Luz. Why wasn't he angry at his father anymore? Why did he rush to him, forgiving him instantly for the long history with his mother? Contrary to logic, why had he come to the betrayer? In his mind, something clicked when he learned about his grandmother's death. The lock fell off his heart, and time turned back. In that moment when his mother disappeared, he realized that she didn't betray him. He had just forgotten about her over the years. Memories had faded. He needed to get used to tea again. His father had been there all these years, but he hadn't even thought about him, forgetting that he was his own flesh and blood. Miguel's father loved his son in his own way. He just didn't know any other way to do it. Miguel left his car by the entrance and returned to that distant day of escape. He walked to the place where he spent the night with his unexpectedly found friend. Now, a brand new 9-story building was there, with children playing and frolicking in the yard. Miguel walked to the station, reminiscing along the way that he had made the same mistakes as his parents did. He didn't stay in touch. He was cruel and selfish. Each action could be justified by human weakness. His father had stumbled once when he took tea in, but what could he do if his heart belonged to someone else? Apparently, he deeply loved Olympia, to the extent that he committed terrible deeds for her. But Olympia was unhappy in her own way, as the love of her life brought another woman's son along. How could they come to terms with that? As it turned out, Pablo loved his son more than Olympia, since he couldn't forgive her for her actions against his stepson. Out of fear of losing his son, he stopped communicating with her. And Miguel? He just grew resentful. And in the process, 4 lives were destroyed, both the mother's and the father's, as well as Olympia's, and the grandmother didn't see her grandson's awakening. He was simply selfish, a worthless person who didn't do anything good for others. He even helped his grandmother out of greed and abandoned her when she became useless. These thoughts tormented him as he turned them over in his mind. Miguel approached the ticket counter, purchased a bus ticket, and as if transported back to that same day, he arrived at the stop early, walking to his grandmother's village. It was dawn. Hot July sun warmed the earth. Peaceful fields with buckwheat spread around, and the ears of grain gently swayed in the wind's rhythm. The land shimmered with green waves, bringing solace to all living beings. The sun timidly emerged, greeting the world with its warm rays. Calm, silence, harmony. As if entranced, with every fiber of his soul, Miguel felt united with nature. When he reached the outskirts, he paused, took a deep breath, and smelled the aroma of wormwood, honey, and freshly baked bread. Then, he slowly headed toward the cemetery. He struggled to find the hill with the name Marlene Navarro. Falling to his knees, the grandson was crying, cleansing his soul of its last remnants of bitterness. "Grandma, forgive me, I realized too late that you are the most valuable person in my life. The ability to cherish those who are close." "Son," a familiar voice called out, "you understood everything correctly. I'm proud of you, and now I cannot worry about it." Miguel turned around, stood up, and like in his childhood, rushed toward her, hugging her and laying his head on her chest. "Mom, you came back, and I've been waiting for you." From that day on, a completely different life began, as if the years had no power over them. The mother and son tried to make up for the lost time together. Together, they decided to stay in the village for a while, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Miguel enthusiastically shared stories of his life and attentively listened to his mother's tales of different military stories. They restored the house with their own efforts. The old house was falling apart. Ideally, it needed to be rebuilt. They visited Timoteo, who had started his own family and lived not far from the village in a well-built forester's house. Miguel finally understood what true happiness and tranquility meant. Together, they visited his father. Besides, the office kept calling. The deputy couldn't handle the current issues, so Miguel had to interrupt his vacation and return to the second branch. First, they visited Pablo, and his mother hesitated to enter his room but eventually did and silently sat in a corner on the table. "Well, hello, Pablo, I see you've aged." "Well, I'm not getting any younger either." The man got very nervous, quickly sat on the bed, and mumbled incoherent phrases. "Oh, come on, lie down, don't worry, I no longer hold any grudges. I let go a long time ago. Look, I've seen our son. T, my dear, stay, the patient weakly said. Well, if you want, I'll sit with you. After all, I never got remarried, I loved only you. But let's not dwell on the past. Miguel entered, visited his father, and they left, leaving him to rest. They decided to let Luz go. Now, his mother wanted to take care of her ex-husband herself. The caregiver explained the care he needed and prepared a comprehensive list of recommendations. With Luz, Miguel left the apartment and invited her on a date. Just a month later, they got married. He couldn't have imagined a better girl. She was sincere, caring, beautiful, and fell in love with her future husband at first sight. The company no longer provided the same satisfaction as before, so Miguel decided to sell his first branch to Samuel, who took a small loan and bought half of the business. By then, the engineer had become an experienced businessman, having accumulated a fortune. Miguel transferred the second branch to his mother. The former cleaner once entered the company as the owner, stunning the employees who remembered how their former boss used to behave rudely with the service staff. Running the business was challenging for the woman. At first, she consulted with her son, but later, she hired a director. T divided the profits equally, transferring half to Miguel's account each month. Miguel's father felt much better. He learned how to walk again and spoke more clearly. The former miser was unrecognizable. He made a luxurious gift to his friend Leo, wanting to reconcile with him. Miguel bought a huge trailer and drove it to Laura and Leo's house. The hosts initially refused such a gift, but eventually decided that they could all go on a trip together. Thus, a curious company gathered in the former orphan's garden, organizing a family council. The families of Leo and Miguel met in one place for the first time. T and Pablo refused to join the trip, so it was decided to send the young ones on tour. The bright September enticed the travelers with uncharted expanses. They planned the route to the farthest point of the country. It was a grand project. Leo's daughter ran around with the map, packing backpacks, showing unheard of agility. Only Luz was sad, trying to dissuade her husband from this venture. Miguel worried about living someone else's dream. He enjoyed the time spent with loved ones, but seemed to have no other dreams and lost the purpose of life. However, the idea of the road soon fascinated him, and after a week, in mid-September, the 5 travelers set off and reached the place where they planned to make their first stop and take a walk. An hour later, the trailer stalled. Miguel noticed that Luz was noticeably nervous. The unfortunate start of the trip upset not only her, but everyone else too. They decided to hire a mechanic. While they were waiting, they parked the trailer and asked a passing car to help move it off the road. They organized a picnic and called the station to inform that the mechanic would only come the next week, so they decided not to call other services and stayed overnight in the field. Luz meticulously checked the doors and sat next to Miguel, as if not intending to sleep the whole night. In the morning, she opened her eyes, having dozed off by the bed, but her husband was gone. Leo, Laura, where's Miguel? What are you yelling for? He probably went for a walk. Let him sleep. Don't scream like a maniac, you'll wake our daughter. In the middle of the night. What are you talking about? The door was open, but I closed it. All right, let's go look together, Leo agreed gloomily. Dawn broke outside, and the sun peeked at the earth sullenly from under the clouds. The morning coolness refreshed, and the boundless fields of corn stretched around them. Miguel was nowhere to be seen. Miguel! Luz screamed anxiously into this wasteland. Why are you shouting? Let's wait a bit before panicking, he took his phone. Call him before making a fuss. They returned to the trailer. Miguel's former boss's phone was inside, ringing listlessly. An hour passed, and Miguel did not return. He had disappeared into the night, leaving even his shoes and warm clothes behind. He left barefoot again, Leo said sadly. What are you talking about? Laura asked. Well, nothing. Some stuff. Maybe I'll tell you later. What should we do now? Mom, I'm hungry, Katerina, Laura and Leo's daughter, interrupted the conversation. Wait for a bit, I'll make sandwiches, her mother brushed her off. We need to go back, Leo said convincingly. They had breakfast in silence, waiting for the city mechanic. They wandered around aimlessly. Finally, the mechanic arrived and had been working until evening but found the cause. Somebody played a joke on you, there's water in the fuel. You'll have to use another fuel, he said. The travelers gasped in unison. It was a deliberate stop due to someone's malicious intentions. They had a reserve of fuel in jerry cans, so the car was soon ready for the trip again. 3 phones received a message from an unknown number. With amazement, they read, "I have arrived in town." Miguel. No, it wasn't him who texted us this, Luz insisted. Well, he's quite a character. I still can't figure out what's going on in his head, Laura said. But he could have done it to make the journey more interesting, like a quest for us, Leo mused. This man is a fool, Katerina chimed in with a mischievous smile. Her friend sternly looked at the girl, then burst out laughing genuinely. They managed to lighten the mood. Why then did we have water in the gas tank? Luz persisted. Well, it was probably him trying to entertain us. It seems we were getting bored, Leo said thoughtfully. After calming down a bit, Luz agreed to continue the journey with everyone, although her heart told her that Miguel was not there, and they should return home. She knew that there was someone who never approved of her life partner. The day before the trip, she received a note saying, "The road of your evil boss won't be long." That's why she was anxious and didn't trust the message allegedly from Miguel. The road seemed long, and the tension did not subside, they only stopped once. Laura took the wheel from Leo, who went to sleep. By 2 a.m, they reached the edge of a regional center. The woman drove into a field, turned off the engine, and went to sleep. In the morning, Luz disappeared just as suddenly as Miguel. The spouses found that she had left her phone in the trailer. She wasn't outside. An hour later, a similar message arrived. I left. Luz. Leo got worried. What's going on? Is it another prank from Miguel, who can be expected to do anything, or is it a kidnapping? The family was in danger, continuing the journey into the unknown. Leo, I'm scared. Let's go home. But what about our friends? I don't think they're there. Call the number where the message came from. Well, start with asking about the weather or something. I don't know how to do it. It was decided to find out how things were with their parents. What they said scared Laura. The parents received an even stranger message, "See you soon." Luz. Miguel woke up and found himself in an unfamiliar place. It was a small room with a cot and a window with bars. His head was throbbing. He remembered falling asleep while Luz was sitting next to him, and now he woke up here. He jumped up, feeling dizzy. The door was locked, and no one answered when he knocked and shouted. Miguel was not visited for a long time. A small, nimble man threw him a piece of bread and left a jug of water without saying anything else, then closed the door. So, he was a prisoner. Soon, his family would be asked for a ransom or the company. He may have earned some enemies over the years. Miguel had no intention of sitting locked up in this small, stuffy room. He hadn't faced such difficult challenges for a long time, and this situation sharpened all his abilities. He peered outside and saw nothing but desolation around. No one was on the street. The bars were securely installed, and the door was locked. By evening, he felt weak and hungry. He finished the bread in the morning, and there were no new supplies of the food yet. Miguel took his predicament calmly, figuring out how to escape. When he heard the key turn in the door, he hid. With all his strength, he knocked down the visitor and rushed outside. In the dimly lit corridor, he dashed away, reaching the nearest exit and froze. There was no way out. He was securely packed in this gloomy place until the kidnappers got everything they wanted. With a joint council, Laura and Leo decided to stay in the city. While waiting for news, they visited the sites and tried the local cuisine. Katerina, however, became sad, not understanding where her aunt and uncle had gone. She felt that an enemy would come for her soon or, even worse, take her mom or dad away. She decided not to sleep all night and keep watch. The troublesome trailer, which brought so many questions, was heading back. Laura and Leo took turns driving the car. They sat together in the cabin, anxiously looking at the road. Taking a minute's break, they stopped to visit their daughter. Katerina was awake and handed her phone to her parents with horror. The screen displayed the message, "Don't go there. Protect Katerina." Laura screamed, convinced that her daughter would now be kidnapped. It seemed that someone invisible was watching them and just playing with their fate. So, we were on the right track. Someone really doesn't want us to return. They're leading us away from the city, so we won't get in their way, Leo said. Yes, but we need to be cleverer. We must leave the trailer behind. From now on, we should continue the journey by car, Laura replied. And what? Will we call a taxi? Yes, I think that's the best solution. The travelers parked the trailer in the nearest village and called a taxi from the city. While waiting, they decided to tidy up and gather necessary belongings. On the bed, Luz found a piece of paper with notes, the departure date, stopping time, the arrival of the master, and hourly calculations. Why would they need to write all this down? Leo wondered. After some thought, he folded the note and carefully inspected the belongings. He found it strange that Miguel's clothes and personal belongings remained in the trailer, while Luz's things were missing. It suggested one thing: the woman had left on her own, so she might know something about her husband's disappearance. A taxi arrived, and the family carefully locked all doors before setting off in the opposite direction. Whatever Miguel was like, they needed to rescue him. It was evident that someone had kidnapped him. Nobody really knew who Luz was. She vaguely mentioned that she had recently come from a village, lived alone, and worked at the hospital. Pablo, Miguel's father, might know more about her. Leo decided to go to him with his family. T was surprised and shocked to see the travelers at the doorstep. What happened? Miguel and Luz disappeared on the way. You know, we called, but something strange is happening. They wanted us to go further, as if they wanted us out of the way. Soon, the family gathered in the kitchen to discuss the issue. They thought carefully, compared all the facts, and reread the notes. In the first one, Miguel was waiting in the city, then Luz ordered them to go back, and after there was a hinting at Katerina's kidnapping, they were told to continue the journey. This meant one thing: if they stopped looking for Miguel, they would be left alone. But Leo couldn't betray his friend. He decided to get to the bottom of everything. The family was in danger. If someone had been following the trailer, they must have seen that they returned home. Another equally worrying moment was Luz's strange behavior. She packed so few things for the journey that they fit into a small bag. Throughout the trip, she seemed nervous and overly distraught about her husband's disappearance. After she vanished, all her things disappeared as well. Leo looked meaningfully at Pablo and asked the question that troubled him. What do you know about Luz? Who is she, and why did she quickly get involved with Miguel? I didn't want to get involved in my son's affairs again. I thought Luz really loved him. What's wrong with Luz? Laura and everyone else stared at Pablo, awaiting an explanation. She is Olympia's daughter from her second marriage, my ex-wife. After our divorce, Olympia kept coming to me, wanting to come back, but I couldn't forgive her. She took my son away from his mother, and she separated us. Let's not talk about it. I'm also to blame for everything. Olympia was grieving and married her lover. Turns out she was cheating on me all along. Couldn't forgive me for tea. While I was serving, Olympia raised our daughter, but then she left her with her lover. She ran between me and Luz's dad. That's how it was. I didn't live long with Olympia. We divorced quickly. Without thinking twice, she returned to her second family. So, I'm confused. Does this mean that you had your own families, and each of you could have had different destinies? Olympia wouldn't have abandoned her daughter or pursued an elusive happiness if you, Dad, had thought about your son from the beginning and hadn't deprived him of his mother. If you had let go of your Olympia right away. Oh, well, it's all in the past, Pablo said with a stern look. Olympia hid our daughter from me. I only found out after the divorce, and when I realized what a mess we had made, I was horrified. I even went to T's place to reconcile, but I didn't find her there or at her brother's. At that time, she was searching for Miguel everywhere and even went to my mother. What about Luz? How did she become your caregiver? Leo asked. Well, Olympia brought her to me herself. She visited me all these years, talked about otherworldly love, but I was too preoccupied for that. When I learned about her being Miguel's mother, that's when I got sick, and that's when Luz appeared. She courted me with zeal, asking about Miguel all the time. And when he appeared, she clung to him like a leech and captivated him, looking at him with her innocent eyes. So, it means that both his mom and stepmother teamed up for Miguel? Leo whispered thoughtfully. They want something from him. If they kidnapped our son, we'll soon find out, T said anxiously. What about Luz's dad? What kind of person is he? Leo inquired. He's some kind of simpleton, but he loves Olympia and his daughter. He seemed to work at the plant, Pablo replied. So, they were never wealthy. That means they needed money, Leo said, and asked for Olympia's address. The gathering ended tragically. There was a knock on the door, T opened it, and a courier brought a small package. Leo rushed into the hallway and knocked the package out of the courier's hands. There was a loud bang, and the carpet at the doorstep jumped. The commotion turned out to be unnecessary. The weak explosive was meant to scare the owners without harming anyone. It was just a firecracker, Katerina exclaimed. Nevertheless, the evening stopped being tedious, T said, frightened. Laura suggested that everyone temporarily move to a safe place. After thinking it over, they decided to rent an apartment through an agent. Once settled in their new sanctuary and exhausted from recent events, they all dispersed to different rooms and went to sleep. In the morning, Pablo received a phone call. A cold voice demanded $10 million for Miguel's life. They were given a week to gather the funds. Miguel paced from corner to corner in his small cell. He had accepted his situation. There was no way to escape. At the end of the corridor where he had run, there was a room with vigilant guards. On the third day, they started feeding him better. He thought with melancholy about those who were condemned to death and were given the best treatment on their last day. The door clicked open, and a visitor entered the room. Miguel recognized the woman and shuddered with horror and disgust. There was his stepmother standing in front of him. The door wasn't locked, which seemed strange and suspicious. As if someone else was standing there. Olympia sat on a chair, looked at her former stepson with contempt, and said through gritted teeth, "You degenerate. Worthless degenerate, I hate you. My whole life has been a mess because of you. I wish you were never born. You and your slut of a mother should have died together." "Good afternoon, dear mother," Miguel smirked, which only infuriated her further. "Shut up. If it weren't for our daughter, you'd be rotting in the basement, chained up." "Daughter? So, I have a half-sister too." "How wonderful," Miguel said with a smile. "Well, you are very well acquainted with our daughter, and your arrogance will vanish in an instant," Olympia said as she motioned for Luz to come in. Luz entered the room with her head down, and when Miguel saw her, he screamed and sat on the cot. He seemed to have lost his ability to speak out of sheer astonishment. Olympia took advantage of the moment and melodically recounted all the trials she had endured. The main one being that Miguel was the cause of her separation from Pablo, the only man she had loved all her life. Olympia had gone mad when she learned about her stepson's wealth and success. They lived almost in poverty, barely making ends meet, while Luz worked at the hospital to help her mother and father as much as she could. Pablo's illness came at the most opportune time for Olympia. She had a plan that she wanted to execute with the help of her daughter. At first, the plan seemed hopeless. The son didn't show up at his father's house, but then he suddenly appeared. Luz managed to charm Miguel. Olympia wanted to exploit her son-in-law's wealth through her daughter, But something unimaginable happened. The company was sold, and the second office was registered under the mother's name. Luz could be left with nothing, although she regularly shared her husband's money with her mother. Buying the trailer for her friend seemed crazy, but after some discussion, they decided to use it to their advantage. They decided to kidnap Miguel and demand a ransom from his family. They planned the escape routes. Olympia found a house abroad and planned to leave with her daughter as soon as the deal was done. Throughout the journey, Olympia followed the travelers. Luz opened the door, and her mother administered a shot with a sleeping drug. The guys hired for a substantial sum transported Miguel to the city, and then Luz successfully played the tragedy. At night, she packed her bags and left the trailer. They tried to scare Leo to dissuade him from looking for his friend on his own, but it was unsuccessful. In her heart, Olympia was afraid of Leo, who was an active man with lots of life experience and could find out the truth. She contemplated how to permanently eliminate him, even if she had to kidnap Katerina. Now it all depended on Miguel's family, how quickly they could gather the money for his release. Miguel listened to Olympia's insane plan and sadly watched Luz. She hid her eyes and wiped away tears unnoticed by her mother. She truly loved her husband and regretted giving in to her mother's persuasion. Those tears shed for him, a lost young man, meant a lot to Miguel. Olympia wouldn't be able to execute her plan. Love intervened, correcting the mistakes of those who wandered in darkness. The visitor headed toward the exit and told Luz to follow her, but for the first time, the daughter resisted. "You go ahead, I need 5 minutes to talk." "I need it." "As you wish." "You're a fool. Look, you started to have feelings for him, and what did I gain from it?" "Nothing." "Miguel," Luz whispered quietly. "No need. I understand now. I've learned to understand people. You should know that I'll do everything to thwart my mother. I'll text them today. I'm sorry, I was so afraid to defy her. She has suffered so much. I just felt sorry for her with all my heart, but now I see she won't change. She's always been self-centered. Luz, you're the most radiant, bright soul I've ever met. I love you very much. And I love you. Now come on, take this and eat," Luz said, handing her husband a stick of sausage she pulled out from the folds of her dress. Miguel smiled. After they confessed their feelings, it seemed quite incongruous. T vehemently resisted the investigation. She was eager to gather the money quickly, even considering selling the company to meet the kidnappers' demands immediately. Leo and Pablo stuck together. Laura was to keep an eye on the restless woman, and they went to Luz's father. They were greeted by an unremarkable, balding man who refused to listen and slammed the door right in their faces. Leo didn't give up. "Sergio, your wife has lost her mind. They kidnapped someone. If you won't talk to us, I'll come back with the police." A minute later, the door opened again, and the man didn't invite them inside, but he looked at them angrily and whispered, "Get out. Get out of here. I'll call the police on you." But Leo persisted. "Sergio, Olympia is keeping Miguel somewhere. She's asking for 10 million for him. What kind of man are you if you can't provide for your family? Get out. Get out of here." The owner shrieked. After a moment of hesitation, he closed the door. A minute later, he called the guests, who were descending the stairs, and tossed them a piece of paper. It was the address of Olympia's old house in the city. At the same moment, a message arrived from an unknown number. "Miguel is in the city. Dad knows the address. Luz." The woman turned out to be neither a kidnapper, nor a wife, nor a stepmother, nor even a mother. In the end, she turned out to be insignificant. Pablo, who had already filed a report on the kidnapping and ransom demands, immediately headed to the police station. On the same day, they all traveled to the city. Leo and Laura, along with Katerina, returned to the trailer. Pablo and T went together with a police team. It seemed unlikely that they were following a false lead. Luz left too many clues. The house greeted them with barred windows and a gloomy facade. They called the local police for assistance. Pablo himself knocked on the door of the house, and Olympia opened it, startled and attempting to hide. "Hello, Olympia. I've come for a visit. Will you let me in? What are you doing here, and why? Go away. I'll call security right now." "Oh, come on, dear, I just missed you." The man stepped forward and hugged the stunned woman. The squad began storming the building, and handcuffs were quickly placed on Olympia's wrists. Within 5 minutes, the would-be gangsters, hired by the inexperienced woman, were arrested, cursing their employer with every breath. Miguel was found in a distant room, looking thinner and weaker, but he appeared serene. In the evening, all the participants of the recent events gathered in the trailer. Miguel recounted what had happened to him during the past week. He listened as they searched for him and, to the surprise of many, said that he didn't hold any grudge against Luz, who turned out to be a weak and obedient daughter, blindly trusting her mother. Olympia was arrested along with her accomplices, but Luz had disappeared. In the morning, a message arrived: "I left. Luz." At sunrise, Miguel stepped out of the trailer and took in a deep breath of the boundless fields. It smelled of buckwheat, autumn, fallen leaves, and tranquility. The man immersed himself in the vastness of the fields, feeling the harmony of the entire world with ecstasy. His soul was calm and was waiting for the reunion with his beloved one. They continued their journey.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.